I'll see you guys in the dark.
I was 20 at the time, single and ready to mingle. I was studying at school about 28 minutes away from my house. And of course, I was on Tinder. Now I have dated some older men. I'm attracted to them. So my setting on Tinder for males was between the ages of 25 and 40. I swiped right on a guy who had looked decent enough, and he was 36. We matched, and he began to message me. We go through a day or two of messaging. I explained that I'm really just looking for a fuck buddy, and he had his own apartment, about a 2-minute walk from my school, which was perfect. We added each other on Snapchat, Instagram, and once he takes a look through all my pictures, his way of messaging becomes pretty strange. He starts to message me stuff on Snapchat like, "You're so beautiful. I want to hold you in my arms. You're like an angel." Now, mind you, we have never met. Once he starts messaging me like that, I realize that he's not my type, especially in a friends with benefits situation. I don't need someone like that. I start to leave him on read, and I ignore his messages. The next weekend, I was going to a wedding. I was all dressed up, and of course, I posted a few pictures on my story, which he immediately started commenting on like, "Oh my God, you're so beautiful. I miss your touch. I want to feel you in my arms." I ignore him, have a good time at the wedding, and right before the wedding started, I popped an edible. By the time I got home, it was midnight, and I was very, very high and very sleepy. I had worked earlier that day and hadn't napped in between. I got into bed and started to go through my phone. I live with my family and everyone was asleep. I started getting messages from this guy again, and I'm so high and tired that I start reading them, giving brief responses and saying, "Aw, thanks." Then he messages me saying, "I think I'm going to come to blank tonight." Blank space is the city where I live, 30 minutes away from his apartment. I respond by saying, "LOL, that's weird. Don't do that." Obviously thinking that he is joking. Then he says, "I want to breathe the same air as you. I want to feel you. I want to breathe with you." I begin to freak out, and then he starts messaging me, "Be there soon, babe." I'm like super scared at this point, because I live with my family, and I don't want anything weird happening. Then all of a sudden, I remember that my Snap Map location is on. I go into my map, and I see my little bit emoji, in her cute outfit, sitting at my house. I quickly turn myself onto ghost mode. Then I see his little bit emoji, and it's getting closer and closer to my city. I'll convince myself that he's joking. He's probably on his way to another city near mine, but he's getting closer and closer. It's now 1:30 a.m. in the morning. For the first time in years, I begin to pray. 10 minutes later, I check the Snap Map again. Now, even if you are in ghost mode, you can see if you are sharing locations with someone, although the other person can't. When I looked at my map, I was sharing location with him. He was right outside my house. I looked out my window, and there was a car with his lights on. At this point, I'm so freaked out, my heart is inside my throat. My anxiety is going through the roof, and I'm still high. I end up passing out, falling asleep. I wake up in the morning, scared. I check my phone. He had sent a few messages saying, "You have a beautiful street, a beautiful home. Have a good night, baby." I go into my mom's room to ensure that nothing has happened, and she was fine. I later went to work, and after work I went to the police station, spoke to them. They said they couldn't do anything unless he tried to come over again, and that's when I should call the police. I went home, and for a few days I got no messages. Then at 5 a.m. on the following Tuesday, I got a message. "Even though I drove all the way to your house to breathe the same air as you, you still have not messaged me. I'm not as desperate as I seem. If you ever want this D up into the balls, let me know." Since then, I've heard from him once or twice, but I eventually blocked him. I didn't block him from the start because he knew where my house was. I was scared that if he wouldn't get a hold of me, he would just show up. So, creepy asshole who showed up at my house in the middle of the night, you need to just leave me alone. I'm not interested in you anymore. 3 or 4 years ago, I decided to check out Tinder and see what it was all about, thinking, what the hell, and that I had nothing else to lose. I quickly made a profile, and after an hour or so of checking out the app and how to use it, I matched with a guy in my area and we just started talking. We spent most of that afternoon exchanging messages and chatting, asking questions, getting to know one another. By late afternoon, he had given me his cell phone number, and we took the messages away from Tinder and started texting. After a few days, everything was normal, and we were having nice chats daily. Naively, I thought this was pretty cool, to match with someone so nice, and that had similar interests on my first go using Tinder. Boy, was I wrong. On the fourth day of us texting back and forth, his tone shifts, and he starts asking really odd questions, some of them pretty sexual, some of them not. There had been flirting between us, and a few double entendres, something like what he started asking. A lot of his questions were really sexually specific. I quickly nipped this in the bud, and told him that I was uncomfortable. He apologized for this, and accepted how I was feeling. We proceed from there. I'll bet a lot more continually on that part. I didn't have a lot of dating experience at the age of 20, and as this was my first time using Tinder and online dating, I thought this was normal behavior. However, I knew not to ignore the odd feeling I had in the pit of my stomach. When he asked if I'd like to meet up for a coffee a couple of days later, I accepted somewhat reluctantly. I knew enough about this sort of stuff to make sure to tell people I was going out, who with, and where we were going in case anything had happened. After we agreed on a local coffee shop, the tone turned again, and he started making all these assumptions, and I had to tell him several times that no, I would not sleep with him right away. The final straw came when he started texting, saying that he would run away together, and that he was going to take me away, and we could elope. Just as I'm formulating a text to send back to him in reply to the "I want to whisk you away" message, my phone pings, and I get a message from him telling me that he has rope and duct tape in the back of his car, ready for us to use. I noped out of there real quickly. I stopped replying to his messages, blocked him, then reported his profile through Tinder. I wasn't sure what else to do about the situation aside from that, but I made sure that anyone I knew who was using Tinder, I told them about this guy, so if he came up, they knew not to match with him. So guy with the rope and duct tape in the back of his car who wants to take a girl away. That was pretty creepy, and I hope you don't try that on another woman. This all happened when I was 19. I'm not the best looking dude, so I've never had much luck with women, and I ended up on Tinder. I wasn't having much luck there either until the third month of using it, when a blonde woman named Katie messaged me. She was pretty enough that I just dismissed her as a bot. It wasn't until 3 days later that she messaged me again, which was odd because bots almost never do it more than once. I clicked on her chat and replied, then looked at her profile. What I saw was pretty generic, but definitely wasn't a bot's profile. We had been talking for like a month when she proposed the idea that I come see her. I was pretty reluctant as she lived nearly 8 hours from me by car. I had to admit, I really did like her quite a bit, and I had been thinking about asking her if I could come see her for a while. After a bit more badgering from her, I finally said I would take the drive to go see her. At this point, I had no reason to doubt she was who she said she was. She had video chatted every other week, and called most days. I just assumed I got really lucky. Things did get a little weird on the way there, though. She kept messaging me, asking me where I was, and making sure I was still coming. At some points, when I took more than 30 minutes to respond, she sends me a slew of annoyed texts. Admittedly, I had chalked this all up to her being nervous about me coming to see her. I was pretty nervous too, so I couldn't blame her. I had a hard time finding the house at first. The directions she gave me were pretty confusing, and it was back through a series of gravel and dirt roads, and a large thicket of trees. It was still about midday when I came onto the old-looking house. A window on the second floor was boarded up, but it didn't look abandoned, just worse for wear. Katie's red buggy that she liked to talk about was parked in front of the garage. My phone and texted her that I was here. She only sent a smiley face in return. When I got out of the car to go knock on the door, I noticed someone was looking at me from one of the second floor windows. I found it a little creepy, but figured it was just her father or something. She had told me that she comes to stay with her every now and again, so I just ignored it. Knocked on her door. She answered with a smile and even gave me a kiss, which surprised me, and I followed her inside. We sat down on her couch and started talking about our plans when I asked her about her dad. Tell me that your dad was here, I said. Was that I was going to be surprised or not? Katie looked confused and told me that her dad wasn't here. I still thought she was keeping up the act, and I told her that she didn't have to keep pretending, and that I had seen him looking at me through the upstairs window. Katie went pale and said that she had out of there now. Ran out to our cars, and when I questioned Katie, she informed me that her dad wasn't there, and that she had been home alone until I showed up. I called the police, and while I was on the phone giving the address, Katie gasped and pointed to the window where I had seen the guy last. He was looking at us from out the window again. I got a better look of him, and he seemed much older and frail. It's like he hadn't eaten anything in a while. He left the window after he saw that we saw him. The police took half an hour to show up, and the whole time, Katie was just crying and mumbling about how she was an idiot for not keeping her doors locked. When the police finally did show up, one started asking me and Katie questions, and the other two searched the house. They came back out a little later and told me and Katie that while they did not find anyone, they did find that the back door was hanging open. Whoever it was had run out into the woods, but the cops were sure the house was empty now. After the cops left, Katie asked me to stay the night because she was too scared to be in her house alone. I gladly did, and we slept downstairs on the couch, as Katie's bed was the next room next to the one the man had been in. Katie had also brought out the shotgun that her father had given her, but she never used. I told her it was fine, the man's gone, but she just insisted, saying she'd feel safer if we had it out. I'm glad she did. Later that night, I was still wide awake, watching some TV. Katie had somehow managed to fall asleep. In the kitchen, I heard the sound of a doorknob being turned. At this point, I wasn't even scared. I was just pissed off. I flipped on the light in the kitchen and pointed the gun at the kitchen door, and there he was. The guy that had been in the house before was standing on the other side of the glass door. He looked shocked, and I'm glad we had the door locked. The man unfroze and yet again ran into the woods. I woke up Katie and told her what happened, called the police yet again. When they arrived, they did a sweep of the woods and found no one yet again. They told Katie and me that it'd probably be a good idea to stay somewhere else for the night. Katie and I said our goodbyes. She was going to stay at her friend's house, and I was just going home. I left a little after Katie did. I was on the phone with my brother telling him about what happened. My headlights were on. As I was talking, something caught my eye. That fucking man was standing at the corner of the house, just watching me. I gunned it out of there and didn't even bother calling the police again. But I did text Katie, and she said she was going to call them again. I don't think that Katie ever went back to that house alone.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.